Hello, everybody. I hope you are having a fantastic day. My name is Kmart, and I want to talk about some basketball. And there is some basketball to talk about here already. Thought we were sort of going to be in a bit of a dry patch, uh, really running up to the NBA draft itself. But we had a little bit of news dropping today. Couple of big stories. Starting off, really first and foremost, we'll just sort of get directly into the big news. The Charlotte Hornets are going to be sold. The franchise, owned by Michael Jordan for the past 13 years, or majority owned by Michael Jordan the last 13 years, is going to be sold to a new owner. Michael Jordan is selling his stake, and I believe that stake is going to a group headed by one of the minority owners of the Hornets. So, not an external group coming in and buying things out entirely, just sort of a shift in leadership for the Hornets. But it comes at a time where honestly the Hornets kind of did need a little bit of a shakeup there in their ownership. As I mentioned, Michael Jordan has been the owner for 13 years. And across those 13 years, the Hornets have been anywhere from terrible to aggressively just okay. Their record over those 13 years was 426 wins and 600 losses, which obviously is not fantastic. It isn't the worst, though. I will say that there's a little bit of a saving grace there. It's the 26th best record, or I guess worst record potentially, among the 30 teams in that time span. So the Hornets have not been at the absolute bottom of the barrel here, but they've been pretty damn close to it. So they've never won a playoff series across that 13-year span. They've currently, or are currently, on a streak of having missed the playoffs for, I think, 7 straight seasons or something of that nature. So they've been on a bit of a downswing, and that's about the time. If you're gonna sell the team, now seems like the time for Michael Jordan to sort of bow out, because he has been the face of the, well, obviously ownership. He is the owner, but he's been the face of the management for the Hornets for a long time too. There's been a lot of rumors and sort of gossip around the league about just how involved Michael Jordan gets in some of these decisions, in terms of, signings, trades, drafting, things of that nature. Um, I tried recording this video once, and in that first attempt, which failed, I likened it to the situation in Denver, not for the Nuggets, but for the Broncos, the football team. They had John Elway as their president of football operations, or some title in that frame, for quite some time. John Elway, if you don't know, if you're not a football fan, is a Hall of Fame quarterback. One of the sort of one of the best. Maybe not quite the Michael Jordan of football. I'm not really sure that exists, but he was a guy who provably won in Denver. So when he was brought on in a decision making position, a lot of fans were really happy about it, because who better to choose the talent that a team's going to go with than a guy who did it himself. And that's a thought process that happens in a lot of sports, basketball in particular. We see a lot of former players get put into positions as analysts, as coaches, as um, assistants, things of that nature, because most of the time it makes sense in our brains, right? Someone who played the game, who knows the game, should know the game. That doesn't always work out, though, especially for former players, because just because you know how to do something doesn't mean you know how to do something, if that makes any sense. In John Elway's case, he was a fantastic quarterback, but he didn't necessarily know the things that made himself a good quarterback, and how to identify those things in the players he was drafting. That kind of seems like it's been the deal with Michael Jordan. He was an all-time great player, one of, if not the best to ever do it, but he wasn't necessarily all that adept at recognizing players who could do something similar, right? His eye for talent was a little bit iffy. Part of the reason why the Hornets were not great for 13 straight years was because Michael Jordan had a certain degree of influence in their decision making. So he steps down. I wouldn't feel too bad for him, for Michael Jordan, right? He still has unbelievable amounts of money, accolades, all the rings, all the MVP awards, and a hell of a lot more money. That's the interesting one of the interesting things about this sale. The exact number has not been released as of yet, but I think there was a tweet from Woj, from Adrian Wojnarowski, that the sale is supposed to be somewhere in the $3 billion range. That's billion with a B. So Michael Jordan gets to cash a hell of a check at the bank. The Hornets get new ownership, and that's another team now at the bottom of the sort of pecking order in the NBA that's going to get sold for an insane amount of money. A couple years back when the Clippers got sold to Steve Ballmer, that was a $2 billion affair, and everyone's sort of sitting there wondering, are the Clippers worth $2 billion? Apparently the answer was yes. Are the Hornets worth $3 billion? Apparently the answer is yes. So just goes to show, basketball is growing both here and overseas. The value's going up on these franchises, or the perceived value, if nothing else, is going up, right? Who knows if they're actually worth literally $3 billion, but that's where the price tag gets set. That's the price that this minority ownership group is willing to pay, so that's the price that they do pay. And the Hornets are now worth $3 billion in the blink of an eye. But yeah, that's looking at it from the business perspective. From the basketball perspective here, I think this is still pretty fantastic. The Hornets, were not in the greatest of positions, right? They did not do well last season. They have not done well for quite a few seasons. But if we're looking at this from a positive aspect, a new ownership group comes in, new management potentially comes in. You're looking at a team that still has guys like LaMelo Ball, guys like Terry Rozier still on the lineup. These are young in the case of LaMelo. I think Terry Rozier is a couple years older, but bear with me here, right? Young-ish players who are marketable faces. You have the second pick in the draft, so you're grabbing somebody. Still not sure if the Hornets are decided on Scoot or some other option, but the point is they're going to have a young player who is going to have some solid potential in terms of the way that they play, and also in terms of how well you can market that to the fans, right? You're going to be able to say, hey, we've got 2 or 3 guys here who are all under the age of like 25, 26 or something like that. That's something that the fans can definitely get behind, and the fans have been waiting for something to get behind. You take a look at that region, North Carolina specifically, but even the sort of geographical region around it. Those are people who love themselves in basketball, right? You look at the attention that they pay to the college game, to places like Duke and UNC. They care about basketball in a general sense. They've just been waiting to have a home team worth caring about, more than just it's our home team, so we'll give them a nominal level of support. So if you're the Hornets, you have a chance to basically redo this, start over, build around your young players. Not really sure if we want to count Gordon Hayward in that group as well. Maybe they look to move him. But the point is, you basically get to push the reset button on your franchise. You get to move yourself in a new direction, build upon what you have, and see what that can do for you. So if you're the Hornets, it's I guess it's sad if you're a fan, right? Michael Jordan's no longer your owner, and it should be noted. There were some people saying, with Michael Jordan now out, I think he was the only black majority owner. So in terms of diversity among ownership in the NBA, we are trickling down to basically nothing. But I mean, that's a whole other can of worms. I don't want to talk about anything to do with the economy and how that applies to people's ethnic and cultural backgrounds, because then we'd be here for hours, and I don't really want it. But the point is, the Hornets get sold. The team is still in the same position, though. Michael Jordan having the team does not really change all that much compared to whoever the next owner is going to be. So if you're a Hornets fan, still look at the positives, because there are still plenty there. But that's going to do it for the Hornets. That does move us on, though. There is a second topic here, a little bit of other news that got dropped, and the news that people probably care about a little bit more, and that was the news of the Ja Morant suspension. We knew that something was coming. Adam Silver had said as much repeatedly during the finals, even though he didn't want to distract from those finals. Didn't really do a fantastic job of that. Still kind of distracted by saying he didn't want to be a distraction, but whatever. I digress. The point is, the Ja Morant suspension was announced. It is 25 games, presumably starting at the beginning of the season, for the various shenanigans and bad decisions that Ja has made at the end of this last season, and then again um, during the offseason. So at this point, I don't want to go too deep into it, but at this point, it's pretty clear Ja's got some other stuff going on, right? There's something going on in his life other than the sport of basketball, and that's fine. I don't want to pick on somebody. I don't want to kick a man when he's down, when you're clearly having off the court issues. That's not the territory that I'm trying to get into here. But I will say this: if you are having issues, if you are having troubles off the court, then the place where you deal with them is also off the court. And more importantly than that, not on camera. Just don't do it on camera, which I know, yeah, fucking I'm sitting here talking into a terrible webcam. So do as I say, not as I do, basically. But yeah, if Ja's got some stuff he needs to go through, Instagram Live is not the place to hash that out. That is not a therapy session. That is literally live going out to millions of people. And if you are going to be doing that, you can't be putting yourself in compromising situations. And I have heard some of that talk. There is a contingent of, I wouldn't say it's only Grizzlies fans, but I would argue it's probably mostly Grizzlies fans who talk about, no laws were broken, the gun isn't real, the gun isn't his, this, that, and the other. Like, it's a court of law. And honestly, listen, if this were a court of law, those would be some pretty solid arguments, right? Who owns the gun, yada, yada, yada. But that's not what this is. The NBA is not a court. It's not. Adam Silver is judge, jury, and in this case, executioner. And the point the NBA makes with their statements before on the first incident and now the suspension for the second is the specifics of the situation don't matter. Whose gun it was, whether it's a real gun or not, the things of that nature, irrelevant to the NBA. And irrelevant, I think, from my own perspective as well, sort of weighing in personally. You can't be in those situations. That's it. You cannot put yourself in a compromising situation. You cannot put yourself in a situation that reflects poorly upon your team and upon the league. That's the message being sent here. And the specifics of that scenario no longer matter when you are in danger of threatening the brand. And if that sounds overly sort of corporate, that's because it is. And that's because the league is a business at the end of the day. I don't know if they're a corporation technically speaking. I'm not super versed in that kind of business terminology, but it's a business, it's a brand, and if you do something that's going to hurt that, they are going to punish you for it. And that's exactly what happened here. Ja gets suspended for 25, so he's going to be out for a little over a quarter of the Grizzlies season, which now allows me to finally, mercifully, get back onto the subject of the basketball itself. Because if you're the Grizzlies, you now have to prepare this offseason for a scenario in which Ja Morant is going to miss significant time. 25 games out is a long stretch, and we saw just last season, in 25-ish games, the Lakers went from trash to play-in, right? The Heat went from what the hell are they doing to fighting through the play-in and then making it to the finals. 25 games is a long time to both improve your roster and your mindset, or have the whole thing sort of blow up in your face, right? I mean, for a better example, earlier in the season, at the start of last season, the Pelicans were in first place. Do you guys remember that? That happened. That was a thing. The Pelicans were in first place in the Western Conference for a statistically relevant stretch of time. It wasn't a fever dream. I know it feels like it, especially if you're a Pelicans fan, but that did happen. And then it all kind of went away, and the reasons for that are myriad. So we won't dive too deep into that, but that's what happens. 25 games is a quarter of your season. It is enough to fix your issues. It is enough to tank your season. It is enough for anything to happen, and the Grizzlies now have to go into that knowing that for that time period, they will not have Ja Morant on the roster. So what do? And I think the answer is they do exactly what they did the last time that this happened. And I don't mean Ja being suspended. I mean Ja missing significant amounts of time, because that did happen. in recent memory. They had Ja out with that injury for a good stretch there, and the team thrived. That thrive may be a little bit too strong of a word, but the team survived. The team won games. The team improved upon their positioning to the point where people were joking about, whether or not they were better or worse with Ja in the lineup. And obviously, Ja comes back, starts dropping 20, 30 points a game, and all that talk about whether they were better without him suddenly goes away. But the point was the Grizzlies were able to survive, and I think they're going to be able to survive here again. If they can go at or close to 500 across those 25 games and then get Ja back, they should be all right. The team's going to look, presumably, relatively the same. Desmond Bane is still going to be there unless they mess up massively. Steven Adams should be healthy. Jaren Jackson Jr. should be at 100%. Tyus Jones, who really stepped into the role as their point guard when Ja was hurt, should have an opportunity to do the same. Really boost his own profile, maybe go out and see if he can play in a way that attracts some offers from other teams. The point is, this Grizzlies squad should be okay. The only real piece that they're missing that they had before was Dylan Brooks, and I think they're going to be okay without him. I mean, obviously, listen, the clowniness aside, Dylan Brooks was a pretty solid player, pretty good on defense, was able to score, maybe not consistently, but when he needed to, when the team needed him to. But even with him gone, I think the Grizzlies are in a good position here to survive Ja being gone for this long. So the news obviously sucks if you're a Grizzlies fan. I'm sure there's some people who are upset about it, but you can't keep doing some of the things he was doing and not get punished for it. So he's going to miss 25. I think the Grizzlies are going to be okay without him, though. But we'll see. They could be, 5-20 at the end of that suspension, looking terrible. And then I'm going to look like an idiot. But at this point, I'm kind of really used to it, prepared to look like an idiot anytime I'm going to open my mouth and post stuff on the internet. So that's a risk we're willing to take here. But that's it. A couple of big stories sort of breaking this morning. Wasn't really planning on starting up content, if you can call what I'm doing content, this early, but when stuff happens, I wanted to talk about it. So that is the plan. This is the first video that's going to be going up here. I'm going to take a stab at doing NBA stuff this offseason and this season because I constantly want to talk about basketball, and I'm willing to sort of shout into the wind and put some stuff up and see if anybody takes a look. So that is that. There's going to be more content coming in the near future. Obviously, I am preparing a series of videos, one for each team, talking about what the plan could be or should be for those teams moving forward here in the way too early section of the postseason. So that stuff should be coming out basically after the draft. I am going to wait for the draft just in case some crazy draft day trade happens so that I have to rewrite all the notes that I had about a team, but that's going to be coming out. So there's going to be just a absolute blitz of videos, probably not going to be better quality than what you're watching right now. So I do apologize in advance for that. But I am not a video editor. I do not have a crazy amount of equipment here. So I'm just doing the best with what I've got. Hopefully the talk is good enough where the lack of skill can be looked over. But yeah, more content going to be coming your way hopefully near future. If you like it, then keep on watching. And if you don't, thanks for giving it a shot. Either way, thank you all so much, and I will talk to you later. Thank you.